Hello everyone, welcome to Medjo Notes. Today we are going to see about the regulation of the gastric acid secretion from pharmacology. Okay, I have drawn the diagram here. First, I will explain the diagram which I have drawn. So basically, we have four types of cells in the stomach, which are going to involve in the secretion and the inhibition of the HCl secretion into the lumen of the stomach. Okay. First is parietal cell, which plays an important role in the gastric acid secretion and inhibition. Then we have G cell, then we have D cell, then we have ECL, which is nothing but enterochromaffin cells. When I'm saying just see the diagram and you just refer what I have drawn. First, I will explain the diagram fully, then we can go to the context. So this is the one of the important question. They might ask a separate 5 mark question or as an part of 15 mark question in GIT from pharmacology. Okay. First, diesel secretes somatostatin, endocrine hormone which inhibits HCl secretion. Okay. Then G cell secretes a gastrin. Then we have mucous cells. ECL secretes histamine. Okay, so first I will explain the ECL, enterochromaffin cell. So in ECL we can see here the gastrin receptor, muscarinic receptor. Okay, then we go to the parietal cell. Parietal cell, I have mentioned the gastrin receptor, histamine binding receptor, muscarinic receptor, and we have prostaglandin inflammatory mediators binding receptors here. Okay, so these are the receptors present in the cell, and I have drawn the vagus nerve as in orange color. Then we have mucous cells at the end. Okay, this is the bloodstream which I have drawn. Okay, then which I mentioned as a plus sign, addition sign, all will be promoting the secretion of the HCl into the lumen, and which I mentioned in the minus sign. So this is going to inhibit the process of HCl secretion from the stomach, or it's going to decrease the process of HCl secretion. Okay, or maybe it stops the HCl secretion. Okay, whatever. First step. Okay, first I'll start from ECL. Okay, enterochromaffin cells secretes histamine, which bind to the histamine receptor on the parietal cell. And okay, fine. Before that, how HCl is being secreted, I have mentioned the proton pump here. Two rounds, two circles, which I have mentioned is a proton pump present in the parietal cell. So through this, in the exchange of the H plus and K plus comes into the cell, and KCl then Cl is combines to the HCl. So HCl is formed into the lumen of the stomach. So this is the process of the HCl secretion. Okay, so this process is going to inhibit. We'll see how this process is going to inhibit. Okay, first enterochromaffin cells. These cells secrete histamine. This histamine will bind to the histamine receptor present in the parietal cells, and this will inhibit the process of HCl secretion. Okay, sorry, this is not going to inhibit, this is going to promote the process of HCl secretion. Okay, that's how I have written here. ECL secretes histamine, which will bind to histamine receptor on the parietal cells, which will stimulate the whole process to secrete HCl into the lumen. Okay, this is for ECL. Then we go for G cell. Okay, G cell secretes gastrin, okay, which enters the bloodstream and it reaches the gastrin receptor present on the ECL, okay, and promotes HCl secretion. How means by promoting secretion of the histamine from ECL, and this histamine is going to bind to H2 receptor, and that's going to promote the process of HCl secretion. Gastrin also binds directly to the parietal cell and it promotes the process of HCl secretion. Okay, so that's I have written in the second point that these cells, which are endocrine cells, will secrete gastrin into the bloodstream, from where gastrin will bind onto the gastrin receptors on ECL, which will stimulate histamine release, which will then stimulate HCl secretion by parietal cells. Okay, then we have vagus nerve. Okay, vagus nerve, which I have drawn in orange color. So, which secretes acetylcholine at the nerve endings. This acetylcholine is going to bind at the muscarinic receptors present on the ECL, and it promotes the HCl secretion by again releasing the histamine, and it binds to the H2 receptor, histamine receptors, and promotes the HCl secretion. That's I have mentioned in the vagus nerve. Vagus nerve innervating the stomach will secrete acetylcholine, which will bind to the muscarinic receptors on both the parietal cells and enterochromaffin cells. So parietal cells have muscarinic receptor, right? So it acetylcholine is directly bind to the muscarinic receptors present on the parietal cells and going to stimulate the process of HCl secretion. Okay, so these three which I have mentioned, these three process will going to stimulate the process of HCl secretion into the lumen. Okay, now we are going to see the inhibitory processes. Okay, here we have D cell. This D cell is going to secrete somatostatin, a local hormone, an inhibitory hormone which inhibits the HCl by flowing into the bloodstream. Normally, it inhibits the HCl secretion. Okay, okay. What is mainly what is inhibiting this process means. Okay, now we have inflammatory mediators. Those are prostaglandin E2 and prostaglandin I2. Okay, so here I didn't mention the COX enzyme. Okay, uh, but I have mentioned in this notes. In inflammatory mediators such as prostaglandin E2 and prostaglandin I2 derived from arachidonic acid inhibits the hydrochloric acid secretion. Okay, by through acid enzyme COX. Okay, arachidonic acid through the enzyme COX. Okay, wait. Here, arachidonic acid is here. Okay, in the lumen, then it's going to convert into PGE2 and PGI2 through the COX enzyme. Okay, then this PGE2, no, mucous cells contains prostaglandin receptors, binding receptors in the mucous cells. It's going to bind into the mucous cells also, and this parietal cell also have P receptors, prostaglandin receptors, and it binds to the parietal cells, and it inhibits the process of HCl secretion. By inhibiting this process, okay, so then it binds to the mucous cells, then mucous cells secretes mucus and bicarbonate, which is going to inhibit the HCl secretion. You might see in left side, right? I have put on two arrows, one for mucous cells, there one P receptors is there, prostaglandin binding receptor is there, and parietal cell, this parietal cell also contains prostaglandin binding receptor. So it binds to both the cells and it inhibits the process of HCl secretion. Here it totally inhibits the process of HCl secretion. Here it stimulates the mucous cells, and these mucous cells is going to secrete mucus and bicarbonate. So these products is going to secrete the inhibit the process of HCl secretion. Okay, that's what I have mentioned here. This first point, inflammatory mediators is prostaglandin. No. The second point is arachidonic acid through the enzyme COX can synthesize PGE2 and PGI2, which bind to prostaglandin receptors, which inhibit HCl secretion by parietal cells. Then PGE2 and PGI2 also attach to mucous cells that will help to secrete mucus and bicarbonate, which neutralize the excess acid, which prevents the acid from damaging the stomach itself. Okay, so these are the processes that's going to inhibit and stimulate the process of HCl secretion in the stomach. Okay, this is the very important question, and we have to understand this process happening in the stomach. And HCl secretion, how it's happening, we have detailed see we have seen in physiology in GIT chapter. Okay, now we will see the conditions in which have excess HCl secreted. Okay, first one is peptic ulcer. This peptic ulcer, these are eroded areas of the mucosa caused by the digestive activities of the gastric juice and acids may be perforated or bleed. It can occur anywhere along the gastrointestinal tract. Okay. Then pathophysiology, it is caused by the bacteria Helicobacter pylori, imbalance between mucus damaging products such as HCl and pepsin and protective agents such as mucus and bicarbonate. This is the pathophysiology of the peptic ulcer. Okay, causes, what are the causes of peptic ulcer? So I have mentioned in green box, those are drugs. Actually I will explain it later. causes or stress smoking NSAIDs. So what is mean by NSAIDs? Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. So because of this, how peptic culture is happening? Just think. So these are anti-inflammatory drugs. What is the inflammatory reaction taking place at the stomach? I mean, at the parietal cell. So this, I mean, inflammatory mediators, this going to inhibit the process of HCl secretion, right? So what anti-inflammatory drugs is going to inhibit the process of secretion of the PGE2. So once PGE2 secretion is inhibited means then HCl secretion, which will not be inhibited, is going to secrete as excess. Okay, so and when you give insights, no insights drugs, so HCl secretion is going to increase in that case. So these are non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. We'll see it later. Okay, so NSAIDs will act by inhibiting the enzyme COX. How NSAIDs act by inhibiting the enzyme COX. So once the enzyme COX is inhibited means from arachidonic acid, PGI2 and PGE2 is not going to be secreted. So which will lead to secretion of the excess HCl leading to peptic ulcer. So simple. So then we have gastric acid reflux. So what is mean means backflow of stomach contents upwards into the esophagus. Esophagus lacks the protective lining of stomach, so it can lead to inflammation, paining, and damage also. Then we have GERD, gastric esophageal reflux disease. So it is nothing but 20% of heartburn will be seen in this disease, GERD. So there are separate drugs for all these causes. First, main is H2 blockers. So these H2 blockers inhibit all the histamine receptors, and these are shorter acting drugs. Okay, drugs classification video I'll put later as a shots or as a reel. Okay, then we have antacids. Before that, we'll see about proton inhibitors, which are most important than antacids and H2 blockers. So these proton pump inhibitors are usually suggested by the doctors, binds irreversibly with the PPS and blocks long-lasting effects. Nothing but going to inhibit the process of proton pump. So here I have mentioned the proton pumps, right? So this drug is going to inhibit the process of proton pumps. So because of that, HCl secretion is going to, which leads to inhibition of the HCl secretion. Okay, then we have antacids. Antacids are nothing but combination of magnesium and aluminum salts, which will neutralize the HCl and short-acting drugs. Okay, so that's all for regulation of the gastric acid secretion. So once I'll tell the summary of this video. First, we have ECL. From ECL, histamine is going to release and it binds to the H2 receptors on the parietal cells and going to stimulate the process of HCl secretion. Then we have gastrin, which is secreted from the G cell, and it enters the bloodstream and it binds to the ECL. The Gaussian receptors are present on the ECL, and from ECL it's going to histamine is again going to release and stimulate the process of HCl secretion. Then we have vagus nerve, which I have mentioned in the orange color, which is going to secrete the acetylcholine. This acetylcholine is binds to the muscarinic receptors present on the ECL and parietal cell, and it going to promote the process of HCl secretion. So then we have D cell, which secretes somatostatin, which is an inhibitory hormone. This going to inhibit the process of HCl secretion. So then we have anti-inflammatory mediators such as prostaglandin, which is derived from the arachidonic acid in the presence of the COX enzyme. So this prostaglandin PGE2 and PGI2 is going to bind in the P receptors present on the mucous cells in the parietal cells, and then in parietal cells it's going to inhibit the process of HCl secretion, and the mucous cells it promotes the secretion of the mucus and HCl bicarbonate, which will then inhibit the process of HCl secretion. Okay, so simple, very simple. You can use this diagram for your exams. In KDT they have mentioned, but the language is too high, so it's really very hectic to take KDT and read in this chapter. Okay, so I have drawn from my understandings. So this is the regulation of the gastric acid secretion. Okay, so in next video I'll put the drug classification of the gastric acid secretion, these proton pumpers, H2 blockers, and inhibitors, proton pump inhibitors, H2 blockers, and antacids. So there are many types of drugs, NSAIDs, Then we have drugs for GERD also. Okay. That's all for now. Thank you. If you have liked the video, just do subscribe the channel.